Hellboy the Crooked Man is the latest, unexpected, and inconceivable entry in the line of Hellboy movies. After the major flop that was the 2019 movie, I did not expect another movie based on this character, let alone this soon. This movie's entire production was very strange to me. It got quietly announced in an article, I think it was, without a short teaser or even like a simple image with a logo for the movie. Then the movie wrapped filming in what seemed like a few weeks, and we went forever without hearing any news about it. Eventually, we got a trailer just a couple months before the movie was due out, and it didn't instill the most confidence. Its low budget was very apparent, but I did like how it seemed to lean into horror and prioritize setting up a moody atmosphere over big end-of-the-world scenarios and giant CGI demons. The strangest part of all this to me was how the movie was distributed. After its trailer, I don't remember it getting a concrete release date. I think they stated it would be coming out around October, but as we neared September, the movie got theatrical releases in what seemed like everywhere except the US. And this is what really made me nervous that we were in for a disaster, because the US ended up getting a straight-to-video on-demand release, which is kinda wild. Hellboy isn't the most popular comic book character around when compared to the giants of DC and Marvel, but superhero movies are one of the few things that gets asses in theater seats nowadays. Well, actually maybe like 5 years ago. But still, this straight to VOD kinda gives off the vibe that this movie was made solely to retain the rights to the character. But despite that speculation possibly having some truth to it, I'm happy to say that I quite enjoyed Hellboy the Crooked Man. My main hope for this movie was that it would capture that eerie, moody, and atmospheric tone of the comics. And while it doesn't get there as close as someone say like Guillermo del Toro would, it gets close enough that I was happy with it. I really like that the movie is enclosed in this rural setting somewhere in the south. I want to say Mississippi or Alabama, because all the townfolk have that really heavy southern accent. And because the movie is set in this one setting, you get a lot of walking around in the woods, hanging out in an old dimly lit cabin, a dilapidated church. Because of that, the movie is shot on location and there's very little use of green screen or VFX like that. Actually, the one sequence that uses VFX to put the characters in this otherworldly environment ended up working really well for me because it was such a stark contrast to the rest of the film. It heightened the fantastical nature of this other realm we briefly step into. And it also might be the most Mignola feeling sequence of the whole movie because of how heavy the shadows are, and there's just nothing but a black void as the background. You got this giant beast with a booming voice speaking in that cryptic style of dialogue that's everywhere in the Hellboy books. The supernatural stuff is just firing on all cylinders in this scene, and it really stood out to me. While we're talking about the VFX stuff, I gotta address this. The low budget nature of this movie is very apparent from the get-go. The movie is sparse when it comes to having big CGI creatures that Hellboy has to fight, but when he does, my god do they look bad. It's like Sci-Fi Channel original movie during the mid-2000s bad. I've seen PS3 video games that have more convincing animals than the one seen here. There's a scene where just a raccoon is crawling in through a window and my jaw dropped because of how fake it looked. To put it simply, the bad CGI was very distracting, but it didn't ruin the movie for me. There were one or two action sequences the movie sets up to make you think it's gonna be this badass hype moment, but they just never hit for me. The choreography and camera work just weren't there. My favorite parts of this movie undoubtedly were the ones that lead into the folklore, witchcraft, the little trinkets that people use against supernatural entities. The movie does this interesting thing with the way it's structured. It's broken up into vignettes or chapters with a title card at the top of it. An early one is called Witch Balls, and it'll go into what a witch ball is, how it's made, what to do, and this really worked for me. I like how it's presenting you this weird trinket or dark magic infused item, and it breaks it down for you and leans into the folklore within this town. Something that caught me by surprise is how this movie wastes no time. The movie is an easy hour-and-a-half watch, which I love, but really what I appreciated is that you jump right into the thick of it. Not 5 minutes in, we're already in the woods, the main location of the entire movie, and Hellboy is already like, there's something evil in this place. And we're off to the races. You know, I keep saying it, but it does a good job of encapsulating a Mike Mignola-style, self-contained story that's not trying to set itself up to be this grand franchise with references, cameos, or setups for future stories. Which makes sense because Mignola himself had a hand in writing the screenplay, and it's super faithful to the comic it's based on. The differences are very minimal, it's almost one-to-one. There are a couple of scenes that dive a bit into Hellboy's backstory and his struggles with what he is and what he's meant to be in this world, and while we don't really spend enough time with that to really get a satisfying conclusion to that aspect of his character, as a fan of the comics, I did like that the movie dove into it a little bit. It would have been weird if the movie just didn't acknowledge anything having to do with Hellboy's origin, so I'm glad there was something. Hellboy's companion, a fellow BPRD agent Bobby Jo Song, she also has her own character arc going on. She's more on the research side of things when it comes to working for the Bureau, you know, documenting stuff, reading books about all the weird happenings throughout the world, but she's keen to get some field experience. So, you know, she's not the most well equipped to be down in the trenches, but, you know, not to get into spoilers, she goes through what she needs to sort of satisfy that need she has of understanding all this black magic stuff. To speak on Jack Kesey's portrayal of Hellboy, I can't believe I'm saying this, but we might have the best live-action adaptation of Hellboy here. I still think Ron Perlman is my favorite because of how much charisma he brings to the role, but Kesey is without a doubt the more comic-accurate Hellboy. He absolutely nails the dry-witted, man of few words, kind of blue-collar dad vibe of Hellboy. Where other actors made HB kind of a man-child, most especially Harbour's take on him, God, he was so damn annoying. Kesey is more chill and subdued. He drops more F-bombs that I would have wanted him to, because again, it reminds me of Harbour's Hellboy. But even with those F-bombs, he was infinitely more mature and, most importantly, just an absolute badass with dope-ass one-liners and a no-nonsense attitude. I wish the titular Crooked Man was a more intimidating antagonist. I think they did a really good job with the prosthetics and making him look like he does in the comics. They do this creepy, like twitchy thing where they jump a few frames ahead and it gives him this unsettling look. Like, you've seen the effect I'm talking about a bunch of times before, but it worked for this character. But by the end of it, I felt that he was just kind of underwhelming and his presence wasn't very foreboding. The entire movie didn't reach the scares I wish it had, even though it is the most horror-esque Hellboy movie we've gotten. The tension was just never there. But I did like the music in the movie. It goes for that creepy, spider-crawly kind of music, like, you know, like the one you find in The Conjuring and Insidious with like violin twangs and the sharp sound effects. Ultimately, this felt like an extended pilot for a Hellboy TV show, with the low-budget, self-contained, small-scale story, the hints at Big Red's backgrounds that can be, you know, further developed as this hypothetical TV show goes on, and this freak of the week villain of the Crooked Man. I think fans of the comics will for sure dig it more than anyone else, so I recommend it if you feel like Hellboy needs some redemption after the disaster that was the last movie. Will it make enough money that we'll get another Hellboy movie? I doubt it, but hey, I didn't think we would get this one this soon, so I guess anything's possible. Anyway, that's all from me. Thanks to Carlos and Sam for subscribing at the top tier. You guys are certified superheroes. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.